Hey, I'm Drew, and what follows is a hour and a half of a workshop that I did on productivity. This was a workshop that I did in front of an audience, and I'm just setting some context for you. You're going to jump in and just get an overview, and then I'm going to get into it. There are some pieces cut out where we had some participation, and I really invite you to pause the video and use that time to to do the prompts yourself. So without further ado, here we go. We're going to do 3 parts, and we're going to cover all this neat stuff here. This is our little workshop Kanban. We have 3 parts, and we've done the introductions and norms. We've done our opening ritual, and now we're going to get into the meat of it. But we're going to go down here to the bottom left and start talking about the trouble with to-do lists. So productivity is getting tasks done, and the kind of classic way to write a task list is a little to-do list. And the trouble with to-do lists is that there's no priority and that they can get really long. And I don't know about you, but sometimes I see a long to-do list and I say, I'd rather just lay on the floor with my face in the carpet and not do anything. So one way that we can improve our to-do list, we can upgrade our to-do list, is to break them out into temporal chunks. What am I going to do today? What do I need to do this week? What do I need to do this month? Just as an example. And if you have any other ideas of ways that you've upgraded your to-do lists, feel free to drop that into the chat. One thing that I use and that I think that it's like a kind of upgrade to do lists is the bullet journal, which can be a little intense, but you can do them. You don't like if you look up YouTube videos of bullet journals, people get pretty fixated on them. What I want to introduce you to, though, is the Kanban board. And are we all? I just want to check in. Like I'm kind of moving through this quickly and moving around. Are we able to follow what we're doing? A little thumbs up. Yeah, cool. So the Kanban board is taking a process and moving tasks through a process. So Kanban is a Japanese word for sticker board. It means that you have post-it notes on a board, and in this one we have a backlog where like everything goes, and then we have a step for tasks that are ready. We put them into a little column called doing, and then finally we put them into a column called done. And the doing column is small because we can do one thing at a time. It's an important little tidbit. Multitasking is doing one thing at a time very quickly, one after the other. There just really isn't. There's very few examples of like real multitasking when you're doing like heady stuff. So let's look at the Kanban as made into taking this upgraded to-do list and turning it into a Kanban. So I've taken all the tasks, turned them into sticky notes, and I've put them on this Kanban board, and I've decided, and I have these 3 columns for the week, the month, the week, and the day, and then the thing that I'm doing. And so I would go through a process of every month I would put tasks into the month column. Every week I would decide what of those tasks I can do. And then every day I'd say, okay, from this week, what are the tasks I can do? And the tool of visualizing your tasks this way also gives you a really cool piece that where you can visualize your process and you can always capture to-do items. So one of the things that will be happening is you're doing a piece of work and then you bump into something. You're like, oh no, I also need to do this. That's another task. And it can distract you from the thing that you're doing, and you'll switch tasks, leave a task undone. I don't know if that's ever happened to you. It happens to me all the time. And what having a tool like this allows is for us to uh, capture the task, put it somewhere, and then we don't have to think about it. It's like, oh yeah, I do need to get my motor oil changed on my car. That goes on my Kanban. I need to do it this month. It has a place, and now I don't have to like do anything about it. And down here, underneath, we have some examples of Kanban boards. These can be Kanban boards. Who here uses Kanbans in your do you just give a little wave into the camera if you have sticky notes on a board? I see a Kanban behind you. It looks like Dave. Yeah, so Kanbans can be digital, online, Trello. They can be in your notebook. They can be on your wall. And ultimately, what the Kanban is describing is a cycle. And the cycle is the intention setting. You're saying what tasks you think you can get done or want to get done in a certain time period. Then you have the creation work, what you actually do. You do the tasks. And then there's the done column, which creates an opportunity for reflection. So you can see what you got done. And this cycle is constantly happening. You are setting an intention. You are doing the thing that you said you're going to do. And this is often overlooked, then you reflect like, okay, I did that thing. How did I do? And the reflection helps you set better intentions. If you say, oh, I'm going to do these 15 things today, and you get done with only 6 of them, you can reflect on that. You can say, okay, so I only did these 6. Why did I not do these 6? What got in the way? Did I get distracted? Did I set my intentions too high? And this cycle can create a tempo. So down here you can see there's like a 3. This is a 3-day cycle, and don't worry if you move something around by accident. We can reset that. So the cycle of intention setting, work, and reflection is sort of like the basis of everything that I'm going to be giving to you. So that's all. This is all really about setting intentions. This is like, I have tasks I want to do, and how do I put them into a space where I can keep track of them. Now what I want us to look at is how do we create focused time, and how do we identify which tasks to do. So the first little tool that I will show is called the Pomodoro Technique. So some of you, does anyone heard of this? It's Pomodoro is an Italian word for tomato timer, this little guy right here. And the idea is that you set an intention that you want to focus on. Then you set a timer for, classically it's 25 minutes. You do your focus work with no distractions. You turn your emails off. You say, in this 25-minute block, I will only be doing this one thing. And then you take a break and you repeat that. And then after the 4th one, you take a longer break. And this is actually backed up by research around focus. Focus is basically dropping into flow state. It's when you're like, time disappears and you're just like doing the thing, you're just really just going through all your emails or writing or doing whatever. And the time that we can stay focused is about 25 to 50 minutes. And so when you need to do focused work, you can actually set time aside and say, like, within this time. So for instance, I will block out a 3-hour chunk on my calendar. I'll say, this is my focused work time. I'm going to do A, B, and C. And then I will do 3 of these sprints because I like to do a 50-minute sprint with a 10-minute break. And so you can adjust this. And the key is really honoring the break, because that's going to allow you to maintain focus longer. And in addition to that, having your intentions set. So you can start to see setting our intentions is important because we need to know what we're focusing on when we set aside time to be focused. Okay, now we're going to start getting a little interactive. That was a lot of like lecturing, but the next question that comes up is like, okay, I have some time to focus. I've set aside time to focus. I have all my tasks. How in the heck do I know which task to do? And that's where this Eisenhower decision matrix. So Dwight D. Eisenhower was a U.S. president and a general, and he came up with this thing. And essentially, we have a matrix that splits up all of our tasks into things that are important, things that are urgent, and then things that are neither urgent or important. Your what is important is things that are attached to your purpose, things that feel good when you finish an important task. You like feel really good about it. And they're attached to your big goals. So important might be attached to, if you're writing a book, writing that book is anything related to writing that book is important. Then we have urgent. Urgent things are time bound. They're typically survival things like you need to eat food. That is a urgent thing. Like hunger will arrive urgently and need to be taken care of. And they often have consequences. So if you don't pick your kids up from school, that messes a bunch of things up. So there's consequences to not picking your kids up. That's an urgent task. Bills, chores, meetings, and eating I have as the example. So what I want us to do is to start, you can just click into these and start writing. I think you actually double click onto them. So let's try to generate some, well, actually, let me go through this one. We have important. So I just shared what is important and what is urgent. So some tasks are urgent and important. They are part of your purpose. They're part of your big goals, and they're time bound. So we have at the Hum, we need to write our monthly newsletter. That is important and urgent because it's time bound, and writing our newsletter is important to us. In the urgent, not important, that's your bills and chores and meetings and eating lunch and things like that. In the important but not urgent, that is things that matter but are not, don't have time boundedness. And so like releasing the new Hum course, we know we want to do that. It's important to us, but we don't yet have any kind of time boundary to it. And then of course you have the urgent and not important. That's like playing video games, or scrolling Instagram or what have you. You don't need to do it in a time bound. So anyway, so let's do this. And Claire says, how is eating not important? I think eating is important. But it comes up urgently. So maybe you could say that like, yeah, maybe eating, we don't have, if it's controversial, we can play around with it. To some people, maybe eating isn't as important. But yeah, if we want to just double click on any of these and try and put some examples into here. Let's see, important but not urgent. Finally getting your strategic planning you've put off for multiple years. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there we go. Completing the funding application. So yeah, huge, very important. And usually funding applications are time bound. Super, super good. The strategic planning, it's important, but it can happen whenever. Christmas, baking, and gifts. Very important. And that does have some urgency. If you put it off long enough, it will become like, it does have a time, there is time boundedness to it. Ooh, I like this. Starting the day with meditation. Talking to my son. Oh, it's so sweet. Let's see. What are some urgent things that are not important? Like I think meetings are often urgent. You know, they're you have to be there by a certain time, but they're often not important. Uh, and also some not urgent, not important examples. Do we have any? You know, think of things that you do that take up your time during the day that you maybe feel shame around. That's like, oh, I scrolled Instagram. Oh, I oops, I went on Facebook and yeah, doom scrolling
So
exactly.
John Michel says, important plus not urgent. Finally getting to strategic planning you've put off for multiple years.
Right.
Did you read that? Yeah.
Yeah, I got that. So, I want to start taking you through each of these and talk about kind of transmuting this. So, let's so the urgent and not important area, Eisenhower says you should delegate these tasks. And Eisenhower had an entire army behind him, so delegation was super easy for this man. We don't all have an army, so delegation can sometimes not be um, that easy. But if we can automate something, if we can automate our bills, um, that is something. And the example that I really like is actually around food. And you know, every day I need to eat lunch, and what I can actually do is I can delegate it to myself. So I can do meal prep, and I can turn meal prep into an important thing that I do, and then I can uh, and then this urgent thing is being delegated into meal prep, and I'm saving myself time and money throughout the week by doing meal prep before. So that's one way to take something that's urgent and not important and make it important. Um, yeah, as someone I saw buying groceries, that's definitely an urgent thing that can be made important by uh, by kind of forward, you know, doing the forward thinking around it. And and now the
And
important
just
things.
just as delegate to the other hat we wear.
Exactly. You can delegate this to, you know, some of us are parents and we are working, and so you're like you can be moving things into different spheres of what you do. Once something is made important, so the difference between an important thing and an urgent thing is really about scheduling. So let's take the strategic planning. This is something that's been on our plate for a long time. It's very important, but it hasn't gotten urgency. Well, how do we give it urgency? You can take your, you know, you put a 3-hour sprint, a focus work sprint on your calendar next week and say, in this sprint, I am going to do this strategic review. And all of a sudden, you've transmuted this into something that is urgent. So, um, now we have our strategic planning becomes important and urgent because we've scheduled it and we honor that calendar time. So that's just a quick little look at how you can take something that's urgent and make it important by uh, imbibing it with importance, or imbuing it rather, and you take important things and you schedule them and you block out time and you create urgency around them. And this is just like you're going to figure out what is the way that I can take something important and generate urgency around it. So finally, I want to talk about the not urgent, not important. Eisenhower says this is the stuff that you should delete, that you should get rid of. I think that oftentimes this is a question of, is this an anti pattern? Is this a bad habit? Is this a thing that is really taking me down? Or is this something that is self care? So doom scrolling, for instance, I will doom scroll. I'll just like go, you know, doom scrolling is when you're just like looking at a feed, a social media feed or something, and it doesn't really feel that good, but you're doing it anyways. This might be something that you need. for me, playing video games is a way for me to turn my brain off. And when I turn my brain off, I'm resting. So this isn't actually not urgent and not important. This is an important thing, and I can make it. I can honor its importance. That like I need to turn my brain off because I need to rest sometimes, and then I can set aside time to play video games, and I can honor this important thing by making it urgent and setting aside time to do this self-care work. And uh, and so I just really want to. That's where I'm going to leave you with this is looking at the things that are not urgent and not important, and wondering and being curious about like why am I doing these things? What what is what is this doing for me? And maybe that's something that I should do intentionally. And really that's the difference between doom scrolling and like having a little bite of social media is the shame that we hold around it. Do you feel shame for doing a thing? How can you do a thing and not feel shame? And I find one of the ways of doing that is by scheduling it and being like, okay, I'm going to use this time, like after my 3 hour sprint, I'm going to have an hour of downtime where I play video games and doom scroll and do whatever I want. Okay, so that's all about work. And now finally, we get into our personal accountability. So I'm going to put a 5 minute timer on the clock. And what I want you to do now is just write in your journal um, about what helps you to be accountable. And if you finish or get stuck, just start trying to populate these sticky notes on here with some ideas. And you can also put in the chat, and Guy and I will um, we can add them to the sticky notes. So I'm seeing, let's see, wanting, there it is. Okay, wanting to do my job well, the responsibility, mastermind groups. If anyone doesn't know, a mastermind group is like a group of professionals that get together to support each other. Um, Having clear understanding of like why the task matters. I see that in like the theory of change and social justice. Like, why does this task matter? So that is our part one. That concludes part one. And that's cycles of intention, creation, and reflection. So you can see how the Kanban is really a tool that can help you set intentions. You can use the Pomodoro Technique and the Eisenhower decision matrix to create focused work time and to decide what really needs to get done. And then we've developed some ideas about accountability. We've reflected on what helps us be accountable, and then we can integrate that into our our intention setting next time. We can really get into that cycle of setting intentions, doing the work, and reflecting. So there you go. That is part one done. I think if I press this button, we get some, look at that. We did it. Cool. Yay. All right. And we're right on time. My goodness. All right. So, this is a long, this is, we've been at this about 1 hour. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to put 5 minutes back on the clock, and we are going to start thinking about what are some personal goals that we want to do. And there's this section up here called personal goals. But in this 5 minutes, I want you to also stand up, stretch, take a break, use the restroom if you want. This is our kind of a break time, and we're just going to put some goals into and categorize them: easy, medium, hard. Just populate some of these sticky notes with goals and move them out into the white space. Spending more time in nature, daily intensive hatha yoga practice, thinking about transition, prioritizing, activism again, another prioritizing important tasks, more consistent weightlifting, that's great, regular habit of reading. All right. So these are great goals. And this next section is all about iterative self-improvement. We are we're going to introduce some tools to help improve ourselves, because we're always trying to be a little bit better than we were before. That's that growth mindset. That's a big thing that we push at the Hum, is introducing growth mindset into organizations. And to do it in an organization, you can do it with yourself. So the first thing about iterative self-improvement that I think is one of the most important things is small goals. So in my example over here to the right, you can see I have sort of my number of minutes I've meditated in a bar chart. And if in the first example, I set my goal to meditating for 30 minutes a day, and most of the days I'm not making my goal. But if I set my goal small to meditate for 5 minutes a day, I'm much more likely to succeed. And I think success is more important than like really doing a, kind of, it's like succeeding is better than doing a big job. So another example of a small goal is maybe I want to go to the gym. Maybe I want to have a more consistent weightlifting. And rather than saying like, oh, I'm going to go to the gym for 45 minutes every day, I say I'm going to walk to the gym every weekday. That's my goal. And the reason that these are important is because, again, big goals have more room for failure. And what we really want to do is be building habits. We want to win, not necessarily do a lot. So just walking to the gym builds the habit of going there. And then eventually you'll go into the gym and eventually you'll start lifting those weights. But it's really building that habit of like, oh yeah, I walk to the gym every day. You're limiting your ability to sort of like weasel out of things like, oh, 30 minutes, I don't have time to meditate for 30 minutes. But like you do have time to sit with breath for 5 minutes. So you set the goal so low that you can never like get out of it, sort of. So if we want to, maybe we can try to smallify, shrink some of these goals in here. So like prioritize. We could turn this into prioritize one sector of your life. Prioritize just your Monday work schedule or something. Any other examples that anyone, maybe you have a goal that you put on here that you're like, oh, I could shrink that?
I put on there regularly working on writing my book. And when you presented it like that, I was like, okay, well, I could say like, 3 days out of the week, I spend 15 minutes a day. I mean, that would be more progress than I'm making now.
Exactly.
So, yeah. Okay.
Beautiful. Any other one more maybe? Well, here, I'm going to introduce you to some more little pieces of goal setting. So I'm sure many of you have heard of this. It's called SMART goals. So over on the right, I've just revealed this. And when we're setting goals, one of these methodologies is to use SMART goals, where we're being specific. We're being specific about the target of our goal. it's measurable, we can somehow quantify it or at least suggest. So, 15 minutes every 3 days, quantifiable, achievable. You have the resources available to you to achieve this. So if your goal was to weightlift, but you didn't have access to weights, that's not achievable. Realistic, if you set a goal like I'm going to write 25 hours a day, like that is physically impossible. It's not realistic. And then time related, you want to bind up your goal in a specific, like, when can this be achieved. So that might be like with the writing example. You might say I'm going to write fit for 15 minutes every 3 days, and I'm going to have this many pages done by this date or this many words. So those are just some ways of thinking about. That's one framework for looking at goals. And then I want to introduce some little bonus extras here. So what SMART leaves out is inspired. If you don't care about the goal, it's going to be kind of hard to work on it. So you want to pick goals that you're inspired by, or figure out what is the inspiration for the goal. Why do you want to lift more weights? Why do you what's inspiring about visiting your mom more often? And really tapping into that and understanding that's going to help you with the goals. And then finally, my favorite tip is cheat days. Like, build failure into your design. We are not, like, there's no one keeping score. So if the example I have is I wanted to cut processed sugar out of my life. And what I found was that when I go cold turkey, it was very challenging. And so I built in a cheat day. Every once a week, I would give myself permission to eat sugar. And what that did is it made me go out and seek the most delectable, just awesome, like perfect treat. And I brought like a lot of reverence into eating sugar and a lot of intentionality. And I removed the shame that I would feel when I would, not eat sugar for a couple of weeks and then break down and like eat a hoagie or a ho-ho at the gas station. I was able to design in. I knew that I would falter, and so I designed faltering into my goal setting plan. So yeah, any reflections on anything that I've covered so far?
Just one thing, Drew, and I grew up around this concept of cheat days, and as I kind of have evolved, I don't like that word. I actually think it's still shaming ourselves, because now we're saying we're cheating on ourselves, right? Which the definition of cheat is to deceive or influence by fraud, right? It really, to me, and I've worked with my kids in this languaging pattern, is it's like, well, it's a conscious choice day. Like, I'm consciously doing something else. And so, yeah.
I love it. There you go. Conscious choice day. Yeah, that's very good. The language that we use around this stuff matters. And you'll start to see I have like a little bit of a magical edge to me, and like, words are spells. And when we use words like that, shame, I mean, I think shame is the absolute, it's the worst thing that you can introduce into productivity, is feeling shame. And that's why everything that I'm telling you is really about like reflecting and seeing what the failures are telling you. There's information in that. Like, why do I have trouble with sugar? Well, there's information there, and I can like interrogate that and find out more. So I really appreciate that.
There are some more suggestions in the chat. Treat days and grace days.
Beautiful. Yeah. You all are getting this. Okay. So let's go on. I'm going to introduce you to a tool, and then Mila, go ahead.
I'm just thinking about our unconscious because some things we just cannot handle, and um, we don't know why we don't do certain things because there's a certain parts of our behaviors we just cannot see where they stem from. So I was thinking about it. It's very interesting, but on the other hand, I'm thinking, oh, I'm not a machine. I cannot treat myself as if I were one, and I could program myself to do things in there. But maybe this is because I'm a generation and an Argentinian and mindset. Um, but I don't know. I just wanted to share it.
Thank you. Yeah, that's really good. And a lot of this is sort of, there is like some programming and like, you know, moving through a process and having your tasks, and I really want to enforce that these are patterns that I'm sharing with you, and these patterns are meant to be developed. And that cycle of setting your intentions, doing the thing, and then reflecting, like that reflection is so important. And that's what we're going to get into right now. So I wanted to show you a way of using a Kanban board to bring, when you reflect about something, you're bringing awareness to it. And so we can have a Kanban with awareness, experiment, and practice, 3 little columns. And you have an awareness about something like, I'm not finishing my tasks on time, or in this example, I have low energy. And and then you experiment on how to address that awareness. And the awareness could be a problem, or it could be an opportunity that you're confronted with. And and oftentimes you're able to try things out, see how they work, and then try out different things. So in this example, I'm noticing that I have low energy. I experiment by drinking more coffee and find that it makes me jittery and insane. So that experiment doesn't work. But then I try exercising for 5 minutes in the morning, and boy, does that work. And so I move that from experimenting into practice. And you can literally have this board on your wall, and you're just like noticing things. I noticed that I feel like a machine. How can I change that? What little thing can I shift or try out? And we're just experimenting, like failure is not a negative thing. Failure is the answer to an experiment. And we are experimenting beings. So here's a patterning. This is like the tool, using a Kanban board with these 3 sections. And of course, you can adjust this any way that you want. And then we have the tool, and then the next thing we have is the cycle, is the pattern. So a personal retrospective. This comes back into the intention setting, work, reflection. And the way that we do this in my organization, the Hum, is we have like our work days, which you set intentions for what you're going to do in the day, and then you do the work, and then you reflect on what you did or didn't do and update how you do that. And if you have a bunch of these, let's say we do that for a week, at the end of the week, maybe we spend some extra time reflecting on the entire week. And organizations will have retrospectives, but we can have our own retrospectives, and we can just sit down and make some time to ask what's working, what isn't working, and what needs to change. And you can see how this tool, the personal mastery board and a personal retrospective, work together. So we're creating a tool, and then we're making time to use that tool. And that's the beyond this intention, work, and reflection. That's the other thing that I really want to impart to you is, if you aren't setting aside time to set intentions, do work, or do reflections, then you're going to miss out. You need to have the time set aside for those things. Okay, we're a little bit we're right on schedule. And I want to give y'all some homework. So this is the only homework for the um, assignment for this course, and you're going to select one or two goals and make them small, and then you're going to set a reoccurring calendar event on your calendar, and maybe it's weekly, monthly, quarterly, and in the calendar event, you're going to ask the three questions: what's working? What isn't working? What can I try next time? Hold on to that for a second. I just want to zoom out and say, okay, we've done it. We did part 2, the iterative self-improvement. We've identified things that we want to change. We've turned those things into small goals, and we thought about, making sure that they're specific and measurable and achievable and realistic and time related, making sure that they're inspired, and designing in some conscientious choice or grace days. And then we learned about a method, the personal mastery board, for tracking awarenesses and experimenting with change, and setting aside time for the personal retrospective. So we're going to do just a 3-minute break this time. Oh, there it is. Part 3, the third part. This is all about self-regulation and self-care. So let's get in here and take a look at this little diagram. And I will, if you need to find me, remember, you can click my little star name and follow me, and your view will snap to mine, or you can just sit back and relax and watch the screen share. So, comfort, stretch, and panic zone. This is a framework for describing our kind of where we are in our physical, emotional bodies. Your comfort zone is a place where you're feeling safe, you are at ease, and in a work situation, this is when you're doing work that is just like you could do with your eyes closed. It's easy, you're super confident, it's no problem at all. And then we have our stretch zone. That is where, in a work context, you're doing work where it's challenging, it's engaging you, you're like fully present with it, but it's not easy. And then there's the panic zone, where like you're beginning to get dysregulated, you're starting to spin out of control, you're missing deadlines, you're not feeling good, you're feeling overwhelmed, and these so exercise, weightlifting. Someone had a goal about weightlifting. I imagine yourself on the little weightlifting bench, and you've got the weight, the barbell, or the big bar over you, and you're doing presses. You're pushing the weight up. And now if you're strong and there's not a lot of weight, you're in your comfort zone. You're just it's easy as anything. But you get into your stretch zone once you start to like have weight, and you're like, "Ooh, yeah, I can feel the burn." That's your stretch zone. That's where your muscles grow, because they're being pushed a little bit beyond their comfort limit, and so they're growing. And then the panic zone is when you try to lift that bar, and you don't have any more energy left, and you're like, "Oh no, this is going to drop on my neck, and I'm going to die here. This is it. Like I'm screwed." So that's your like the visceral example of this. And what we want to do is begin to reflect on and think about and understand what we need to be comfortable, and so we can understand, so that we can better understand when we're going into stretch zone, and then what are the things that where are our limits, so that we don't enter into the panic zone. Because once you enter into the panic zone, you need to like really return back to the comfort zone to like recharge. And the stretch zone is actually a place where you're not always there. you're cycling, you're going out into the stretch zone, and then you're resting. Again, with the example of lifting weights, if you're just lifting weights all day, you're actually not going to get gains. You need the rest. And that's like the theme of this whole thing is rest is productive. Rest is productive. Playing video games, scrolling social media is a type of rest, and that is part of your productivity. Okay. Let's go over here, and we're going to do another little journal exercise. I'm going to just do 3 minutes on the clock here. And the question is, recall a time when you felt like you were in your stretch zone and a time when you felt like you were in your panic zone. What conditions were different? What allowed you to be in the stretch zone? What caused you to be in the panic zone? And Gwen says, a mentor of mine calls the stretch zone the stone of strategic discomfort. That's really good. Thank you, Gwen. Okay, and as you're writing this in your journal, you can also add to the sticky notes. So yeah, let's do that. Let's do a little bit of that for the next 3 minutes. All right, Theodora says, in the stretch zone, a safety net of another person who could support work I didn't get or didn't understand. That's great. So these are wonderful in here. We've got like a lot to do with the stretch zone. It's knowing what's happening, being confident, having some plan, the flexibility in work time, anything that's standing out to you. Oh yeah, that's great. Like having a lifting spotter. That's a great in the chat. It's like it helps you stay out of the panic zone if you have someone backing you up, just like a weightlifter would have someone spotting them. Anything else standing out to anybody here? So I'm seeing some like not putting my yogic practice first. So like there's work you can do that allows you to get into the stretch zone. And if you don't do that work, if you don't prepare yourself for going into the stretch zone, it's more likely that you'll fall into the panic zone. And I'm seeing there's a lot of like planning and preparation of like things that we need so that when we go out and we stretch, it's actually, it doesn't lead to panic, which is kind of the next section. Is there just any last, like, I want to point out something, or I'm seeing anything you're seeing before we move on to the next section?
Flexibility in work time. I think that helps too.
Yeah. All right. So, yeah, hard to recognize what stretch and panic. That's a great thing to bring up, John, because this is where reflection comes in, where you're reflecting on like, oh, how was that? Was I like doing good, or was I actually like dysregulated when I was doing that? And that can be really challenging. It took me 10 years to even notice like, oh, I was completely activated that entire time and my body did not feel good. We live in a society that does not prioritize like being connected with our bodies. And I think a lot of this, the difference between stretch and panic is really comes in from the body. Okay, so the next section is what things do we need to thrive on a daily, monthly, and yearly basis? So what you can do here is in your journal, you can create 4 columns or 4 rows like I have them here and label them daily, weekly, monthly, yearly. And this is where we're going to start thinking about what are things that we need every day, every week, every month, every year so that we are thriving. Not just surviving. I want thriving. And these can be things that you are currently doing or things that you are aspirationally wanting to do. And if you feel called to put some examples onto the mural, that'll be really helpful. And feel free to just like shout things out or put them into the chat. And I imagine that you can see the connection here of the connection between, preparing ourselves in our comfort zone, doing things in our comfort zone, making ourselves comfortable so that we can prepare ourselves to go into stretch zone. And
there is Peter question about if this is something that we do or not have or achieve.
Yeah, Peter, this is things that we can imagine that we need to thrive, or that we know that we need to thrive, and it's not necessarily that we're actually doing these things, or you don't have to be doing them. These can be aspirational. Does that make sense? Am I understanding the question correctly?
Yeah, I was just wondering if these are things that are in our control that we can do, or things that we need to have, like, a new house or X amount of money.
Great question. I think that it would be very interesting to have things that are like, I might need a monthly or yearly, I need to go to the doctor. And right now, like healthcare is not free in the United States. And so maybe I don't go to the doctor every year. But to thrive, I would need that. There's a sort of like political edge to that question that I kind of like. So I'm seeing daily rest breaks, having alone time, sports. I assume that's like playing sports or watching sports. I mean, either is great. Having enough sleep, studying, reading topics of interest, eating healthy food, meditation. In the weekly, we're doing physical activity, having coffee time with friends, reading for pleasure, creative expression, love, having a challenge like every week. These are great. These are great examples. And this is another potential piece of homework for y'all, is to really put these things down onto paper. Like, what do you need to thrive? And you can start to see where, it's like, oh, I need to meditate every day to thrive. So I'm going to set up a small goal to meditate once a day, and I'm going to design that goal so that I can make it achievable. And that is going to help me when I go into my work mode to get those things, to be more productive, which doesn't necessarily mean doing more work. I think that when we are thriving, we're actually able to do less, more focused work, and spend fewer hours of the day working, but getting more done. That's the ultimate goal here. I'm not proposing like grind culture, and I have a whole rant at the end about this. So let's wrap these up, and I want to get to the last piece, which is demystifying ritual. So these are coming at a certain cadence, daily, weekly, monthly, and rituals are a series of actions or type of behavior regularly and invariably followed by someone. So I want us to start thinking about ritual. And I know that this is I think we're all kind of coming here from a businessy sort of bend. And I find rituals are often seen as like spiritual or magical. Like, they really don't have to be that. but they can be, certainly, but they don't have to be. And so, for instance, well, let's just start. I have these sticky notes here with some questions. What are some cyclical rituals that we're aware of, or cyclical events? So, for instance, the moon phases. I'm really into the moon. I love the moon, and the phases of the moon create. There's sort of 4 quarters of the moon, and they basically are a week. So they create this very nice cadence. Every 2 weeks is a full moon. That's a fortnight. So what other cycles are we aware of? And you can start to think about, like looking at the daily, weekly, monthly. Like the moon does a full cycle every month. Seasonal cycles, exactly. We have the equinox. That's and the other one, the thing that's coming up in a few days, like the cycle of the uh, the days are going to start getting longer on the 20th solstice. Thank you. And then we can start to think about what are rituals that you perform. Yes, whoever is I think the walrus, or the manatee, the sea lion, the drinking your morning coffee. That's a ritual. If you do that every day, or at a certain on a certain cycle, you're performing a ritual. Brushing your teeth, going to the gym. These are rituals that you perform. And and we did a ritual at the beginning of this to open a learning environment. So rituals have utility in creating different spaces, differentiating between spaces. And one of the I think in this new way of working, where many of us are working from home, or we're hybrid, the distinction between working, it's like my bed's right here. I could roll out of bed and just get out into my computer. So if I don't create a ritual around when work starts and when work ends, I can kind of be in this like full day work mode because everything is in my room. So that's the third question: is do you perform little rituals when you enter or exit work mode? So going to a cafe with your coffee and your computer might be a ritual to indicate like, okay, it's time to start working. Whereas maybe coming home from the gym and taking a shower and changing into, work clothes, or at the end of the day, having, bless you, having, at the end of the day, doing something to get out of your work clothes and change into a different set of clothes.
Here are some suggestions in the chat. Rebecca Fox, ritual artist, has the best ritual game, and there's a link there.
Nice.
And then Raquel says, so true. That's the challenge for me. And then Peter says, Jonathan Harris tripartite model, routine, ceremony, spell.
Beautiful. Yeah. So y'all are hip to this. Yeah, and
Jess has no end work ritual. Me neither.
So the invitation here is just to start noticing these things, noticing the cycles that exist around us in nature and in our society. So we're about to enter the holiday seasons. Some people are doing Christmas and Hanukkah and all kinds of different, New Year's is a big one. So we start to notice the cyclical rituals that are in our society and in our natural world. We start to recognize even the mundane rituals that we perform, and then we start to think about how we can use rituals to open and close space. So using ritual to enter into retrospective time. And you can do this with your teams, saying like, okay, this is a time, yeah. I am so ritual piled these days. Game changer. Yeah, and like when you think about rituals, it's often like lighting incense or burning a candle or singing something or ringing a bell. And these theatrical performances enhance the ritual because novel sensory experience deepens the connection. So when you brew your coffee and you smell that, it's a Pavlovian response, right? You're like, ah, yes, this ritual is happening. I'm connecting the smell to the thing, and I know what the feeling's going to be, and I'm expecting it. And we can leverage that. Can you imagine having a team meeting where you like light a little piece of incense every time that you start it? Like, it's very woo, but but sometimes the woo is useful. Okay, y'all have done great. This is so good. So that is the section, part 3, on self-regulation and care. And we looked at a framing around like understanding where we're at in our comfort, stretch, and panic zone. We've thought about things that help us be in stretch without being in panic and recognize some of the causes of panic, going into panic. We've examined our basic needs to thrive on a daily, weekly, monthly, and yearly basis. And then we've thought a little bit about ritual. And I hope you can see the connection between ritual, creating space to perform these necessities for thriving that help us stay in our stretch and comfort zone and stay out of our panic zone, and how goals can assist these things. I'm going to actually just zoom us out. So seeing how our patterns of intention setting, work, and reflection can tie into ritual, can tie into making sure that we have the information we need so that we're leaving our comfort zone and not going into our panic zone, that our self-improvement can be leveraged on top of ritual and within our cycles of work, and that we can build in times of larger reflection to really see what's happening for us. So these 3 things are very much interconnected, and again, picking just one thing to try and integrate. And I would recommend the retrospective. If you're gonna like bring anything in, just setting aside a ritual time to really think about that. Think about like, how are things going? What should change? That is the simplest thing you can do. Okay, I want to do some final thoughts to wrap us up. First, I already touched on this a little bit. Productivity is not relentless work. If you're a Twitter person, you've been watching kind of the Elon Musk taking over Twitter, the 80-hour work week is so unsustainable. In the long run, it's less productive. If you are working your people or yourself 80 hours a week, you will not be able to maintain that. You will burn out, and I can almost guarantee you that it will cost you more, unproductive time than if you just like took breaks and rested. Rest is productive. Hard work is a myth. Everyone that you see that's like the hyper productive, self-made, lifted myself up with my own bootstraps, those people are making certain labor invisible. Those people have housekeepers to clean their house. Those people have childcare. Those people have spouses who are doing like all the other work and cooking them food and making, like all the most brilliant scientists, they had people doing their laundry. You never hear about the genius scientist who discovered calculus, but like they had spouses and servants and maids and people doing care labor. And I know all these tools. I'm often not using these tools. The people who, be careful about trusting people who are like, you can be ultra productive. Don't try to be ultra productive. And I want to also recognize that some of us face gigantic systemic hurdles to our thriving. So like you can be so productive, but if you're in a work environment where people don't listen to you because of your gender identity or like the melanin content of your skin, like you cannot outproduce those systemic hurdles. And like I think life is supposed to be fun. That's a pretty, that's just me. And I think that laziness is great. So even though I'm running a productivity workshop, like rest is productive, being lazy can be productive. And if you can just pick one thing from this, and like I said, the retrospective, I think is the one. So okay, that concludes the yeah, intelligently lazy, strategically lazy, very, strategic rest, all that stuff. Very good. Oh, okay. Whoa. The editing is leaving some things to be desired, but here we are. That was the end of it. Now it is me here much later. I'm just finishing editing this. Really want to thank you if you are hearing my voice. You've watched maybe the whole thing. That's really awesome. I'm Drew. I work for the Hum. We help teams and individuals be maybe not more productive, but developmentally oriented. So bringing teams into a developmental orientation and working more productively together. And if you're interested in that, you can go to thehum.org. I'm going to put some links in the doobly-doo down below. Maybe something will appear here on screen. I'm available for coaching, and keep an eye on the Hum. That's where I'm going to be doing most of my other workshops. So once again, really just huge thanks for showing up. I think we'll have some other videos will probably appear right here. I don't know. I'm gonna. This is like a weird. I'm like, they'll be here. I'm sure they'll be here. I'm almost certain they'll be here. And if they're not here, this is funny, right? This is a nice little comedic relief at the end of the video. Huh? Right? Right? Okay. Well, cool. Thanks. Really appreciate your attention. Bye.